Welcome to this explainer. Today we're doing a deep dive into Coutts, and we're going to bridge the fascinating 330-year history of this ultra-exclusive institution with its incredibly explosive modern-day realities. Now, why does this matter to you? Well, because it's a real-time masterclass in what happens when centuries of elite, closed-door tradition suddenly crash headfirst into the unforgiving transparency of the modern digital age. Let's get into it.
To kick things off, what does it actually take to bank with the British royal family? Seriously, think about it. Coutts is an institution so closely tied to the monarchy that it's often referred to simply as the Queen's Bank. It boasts this wild client list made up of royalty, nobility, and the absolute ultra-wealthy. But how did it get there? And more importantly, what happens when that aristocratic secrecy collides with modern transparency?
Here's how we're going to break this down today. We'll start with the sign of three crowns, move on to the philanthropist heiress, check out exclusivity in high society, dive into fines and financial scandals, and finally wrap up with that massive account closure controversy that was all over the news.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the sign of three crowns.
Picture this. It's 1692. The bank was started by a Scottish goldsmith named John Campbell, who opened his shop in London's Strand. This was an era before street numbers even existed, so businesses just used signs to stand out. Campbell used the sign of the three crowns. Crazy enough, over 3 centuries later, the modern Coutts logo still rocks those exact same three crowns today, and they are still located right there at 440 Strand.
Looking at their early history, it's basically a survival story. After Campbell died in 1712, George Middleton took control and navigated some massive early crises. We're talking the 1715 Jacobite Rising and the total collapse of the 1720 Mississippi Company bubble. But the bank survived. By 1755, James Coutts joined the family through marriage and eventually brought his brother Thomas into the fold. By the time Thomas died in 1822, the bank was formally known as Coutts and Company, and it was firmly established as a leading private bank for both British and foreign royalty.
Now, Thomas Coutts was, frankly, a character. He was an incredibly astute banker who grew profits from under £10,000 in 1775 to over £72,000 by 1821, but he also completely scandalized high society. His first marriage was actually to a servant named Susanna Starkey. Then, after she died, Thomas, who was 80 years old at the time, married Harriet Mellon just 4 days after Susanna's funeral. Harriet was an actress, 40 years younger than him. When Thomas died, he left her a jaw-dropping fortune of £900,000 and a full 50% share in the bank.
Moving on to Section 2, the philanthropist heiress.
This part is a classic generational clash. Harriet wanted to keep the bank in the family, so she left the fortune to Thomas's granddaughter, Angela Burdett Coutts. But she attached some seriously strict conditions. The heir had to take the name Coutts, the bank share had to be held in trust, and the heir must never, ever marry a foreigner. Well, Angela took the name, becoming the wealthiest woman in Britain. But then, plot twist, at age 67, she decided to marry a younger American man named William Ashmead Bartlett. This caused such an uproar that Queen Victoria literally called it a mad marriage, and the Archbishop of Canterbury tried to step in to stop it. She did it anyway, breaking the terms of the will.
But before all that marriage drama, Angela actually devoted her life to giving her massive fortune away. We're talking an estimated £3 to £4 million. Her philanthropy was just breathtaking in its scale. She funded sewing schools in Spitalfields, cotton gins in Nigeria, boats and nets for the Irish fishing industry, and ragged schools for the urban poor. Her charity work was so next level that it rightfully earned her a peerage from Queen Victoria in 1871.
All right, Section 3, exclusivity and high society.
So how exclusive is it today? Well, they don't just let anyone walk off the street and open an account. That velvet rope is guarded by a very specific number. As of 2022, potential clients are asked if they are looking to borrow more than £1 million or if they have over £1 million in assets just to use the bank's investment advisory services. It is the ultimate VIP world.
And the bank actively leans into that elite heritage for its modern branding. Take the traditional Chinese wallpaper that was gifted to Thomas Coutts way back in 1794. That exact wallpaper still lines the walls of their Strand boardroom today. Fast forward to 2013, and they actually translated that specific design into an exclusive silk charge card for their clients. And this was right after they had renowned British fashion designers like Oswald Boateng and Stella McCartney crafting designer credit cards for them.
But here's the thing. Even a boutique, aristocratic private bank needs modern corporate infrastructure. Following the financial panic of 1890,
Coutts became an unlimited liability company in 1892. And over the 20th century, it went through this totally complex web of mergers. It merges with National Provincial, which eventually forms NatWest in 1969, and then the Royal Bank of Scotland group swoops in and buys NatWest in 2000. So suddenly, this historic private bank is sitting deep inside a massive corporate structure, setting the stage for some intense 21st century oversight.
Which brings us to Section 4, Fines and Financial Scandals.
To really get this next part, we need to quickly define a PEP, a politically exposed person. This is a customer who holds a prominent public function. And because of their position, financial institutions are legally required to perform incredibly strict, enhanced money laundering checks on them.
Keep that PEP definition in your back pocket, because in March 2012, Coutts got hit with a massive £8.75 million fine from the Financial Services Authority. The regulators found serious and systemic problems in exactly how Coutts was handling these politically exposed persons and managing money laundering risks over a 3-year period. The sources show a pretty staggering string of institutional failures here. The FSA noted that Coutts' bonus system actually rewarded bankers for opening accounts, which, you guessed it, incentivized bypassing proper scrutiny. On top of that, in 2011, they were fined £6.3 million for mis-selling a riskier AIG asset-backed fund, and customers actually suffered losses during the 2008 financial crisis. And more recently, in 2021, the bank got sued for $1.03 billion by Malaysia's 1MDB sovereign wealth fund, alongside fines from the Swiss markets watchdog for breaching money laundering regulations.
Okay, Section 5, the account closure controversy.
Let's stick strictly to the facts here as they unfolded in our sources. In June 2023, former MEP Nigel Farage had his personal and business bank accounts closed by Coutts. In response, Farage used a legal mechanism called a subject access request. This is a tool that allowed him to force the bank to hand over a 40-page internal document detailing exactly why they took that action.
And the contents of that document were explosive. It contained minutes from a November 2022 meeting of the bank's Wealth Reputational Risk Committee. The committee literally described Farage as a disingenuous grifter and stated that his views were at odds with our position as an inclusive organization. But here's the really interesting part. The document also explicitly noted that his economic contribution was actually sufficient to retain him on a commercial basis. They just felt his public statements fundamentally conflicted with the bank's purpose.
When that internal document went public, it created an absolute firestorm. NatWest Group CEO Dame Alison Rose had to issue a formal letter to Farage, apologizing for what she called the deeply inappropriate comments in the Wealth Committee report. She offered him alternative banking facilities with NatWest and launched a full review into exactly how Coutts handles account closures.
The fallout from this in July 2023 was incredibly fast. It operated like falling dominoes. First, the BBC apologizes to Farage because they had initially reported the closure was purely about him falling below wealth limits, which proved completely inaccurate. Then, Dame Alison Rose admits to a serious error of judgment because she had actually discussed Farage's accounts with a BBC reporter in the first place. By July 26th, Rose resigns as CEO of NatWest Group. The very next day, Coutts' chief executive Peter Flavel steps down with immediate effect. The top leadership at both the parent company and the private bank was decimated in a matter of days.
Which leads us to this final, provocative thought. We started with a 17th century goldsmith shop and traced a direct line to massive modern-day corporate and political collisions. So, the overarching question is this. Can a 344-year-old bank, one fundamentally built on a history of aristocratic secrecy and velvet ropes, truly survive the aggressive transparency and polarizing politics of the 21st century? It's a fascinating clash of eras, and understanding this source material makes watching how Coutts navigates its future incredibly compelling. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.